I got to the top of the stairs from my basement, and I had those little red lasers peering through my little window, and they said, "Federal agents, open up. If I don't let these folks in, then they have these itchy trigger fingers, and I don't want my children to wake up seeing their mom in a puddle of blood, so let me open the door."
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. And I've got a great first-time guest coming on, and it's a person I found out about just recently, actually. She's actually quite well known. Her name is Sherry Peel Jackson, and she essentially fought the IRS, and a whole sordid story we're going to get into about how they basically set her up and put her in jail for 4 years without even committing, she didn't even commit a crime. She was just telling people about what she thought about how fraudulent the IRS was. And I got introduced to her, and we talked, and she's going to be speaking at Anarchapulco, and we really like a lot of people that are, doing things out there and kind of standing up to the system in various different ways. And Sherry definitely she's got the badge of honor of being in jail, as so many of our speakers have been, as that is the case. When you try to even just mention how the system's fraudulent or how bad this system is, they come after a lot of people, and they did with Sherry. So she was in jail for a few years just for talking about basically facts about how the IRS is doing a lot of fraudulent things. So we're going to get into all that. She's coming in from Georgia. Pleasure to have you on, Sherry. And the first question I have to ask you, though, is how did you become a voluntarist?
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I have become a voluntarist. It's been a while. I've always been after justice, and I've always noticed that the government does things to people. Doesn't matter whether you're black, white, green, blue, purple, polka dot. We need to understand that they don't like us, and they want power. They want to keep power. So they make rules for their benefit, not for our benefit, and it hurts us all as a people. And back in maybe when I was in high school, I started speaking out about injustice all the way up until as an adult. I realized that something needed to be done, and I couldn't sit still, because there's something that Thomas Paine said. He said, "If there be trouble, let it be in my day, so that my child may have peace." And as soon as I started having children, I said to myself, I don't want them to go through this, but I can't sit here, I can't sleep at night knowing that I'm not doing anything about it. So that's what happened.
Yeah, that's great. There's a quote, I'm sure I'm going to screw it up. I screw up all quotes, but it's something along the lines of, all it takes for evil to exist or to continue is for good people to do nothing. And that's actually a big thing that I talk about on this show, is not just talking about stuff, but actually doing something. And that's all it really takes. If enough people actually just stood up and did something and stood up to when they see injustices, we'd have a totally different world. But for some reason, a lot of people either are blind to it or prefer to be blind to it. They know that it exists, but they just don't want to look at it. And so that's why I really like people like yourself who said, I don't care what they're going to do to me. I have to at least say something about this. And you paid the price for it. And that gets you like top marks at Anarchapulco. And so we're really glad to have you. So let's get into the story. So you were a CPA, I believe, and you're working for the IRS, and basically take it from there.
Okay, I started working at the IRS in 1988. It was a job that I saw in the newspaper. I got hired on the spot, and I figured, well, since I'm decent in basic math and I can figure out problems, I'll go to do the government's bidding and make sure that they collect all the taxes that are due. Well, little did I know. So I worked there 7.5 years. I excelled quickly because I worked with a spirit of excellence, and I got promoted and got to the point where I was getting wired up to take bribes and all kind of crazy stuff like that. But my family was suffering. I was coming home with headaches because I had been fighting with CPAs and attorneys because I started getting larger cases. I started seeing that even within the IRS, they treated the larger companies differently. For example, mom and pop, I would do an audit on them, and they, let's say, owe $25,000. Well, that's a big thing for a small company. And sometimes it would make them go out of business. Yet when a larger company owed $325,000, then they get a CPA, get an attorney in there, negotiate and make deals with the IRS, and then that company end up paying $25,000 or less. So I thought that was very unfair. As a matter of fact, I was specifically told by an attorney that they made a deal at one point with the IRS because the IRS didn't want to give on one of the larger clients. So the IRS agent, lawyer, agent, whatever he was, which was dealing with this case, asked the outside lawyer if he could get a date with the lady with the big breasts upstairs, the secretary. So since he set that date up, they lowered that client's tax bill. So crazy stuff like that. And when you got people suffering, you have people having heart attacks and all that, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong. So in 1995, I quit and started a CPA firm. And that's when people started coming to tell me, hey, Sherry, I'm hearing that the income tax is a fraud. I'm hearing that we're not liable to file and pay. I didn't immediately jump on that because I was trying to get my CPA firm together. But in the back of my head, I said, at some point, I'm going to have to do this research. And then We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education came out with a full-page ad in July of 2000 saying, "Dear We the People, the income tax is a fraud." And they had a lot of law in there. So I looked at that. But the thing I noticed about it was there was another former IRS agent in there by the name of Joe Bannister, and he had written a book. Well, I ordered that book from Joe Bannister. I actually ordered 2 copies of it, wrote him a little letter saying, hey, I have questions. And then he called me in the middle of the night one night because he's on the West Coast. And that's when we clicked. We started working together. We started getting with We the People Foundation and asking questions. And as we asked questions, the government got angry. We became more than just low-flying gnats on their radar screen.
Very interesting. And I know you kind of got into Ron Paul at around 2008 and that sort of thing. So would you say that after you quit the IRS and then you started getting into this sort of thing, that you started to wake up to a lot of these things, a lot of sort of libertarian ideas, so to speak?
Yes, and especially my friend Lockin Rules, he talks a lot about it, and I started listening to him. He does some great videos. He is so to the point when he does these things. And Ron Paul, it's like, I realized that, you and I, Jeff, can work together, and we can be neighbors, and I can't knock on your door and take your money, so the government shouldn't be able to knock on your door and take money to give me. And those are the things that I knew, but it's now getting to the point where people understand, wait a minute, we don't need these people telling us what to do, and we can do this ourselves much better. Obviously, with all the money that they've wasted, I mean, millions of dollars to see if cow farts affect the ozone layer, we can do better with our own money. I work hard, Jeff. I want a good living for my family. I want to go on vacation. But if I keep having to give thousands and thousands of dollars to the insidious representatives of Satan, then I'll never get anywhere. So I said, enough of this. And that's what has happened. That's where I am now.
That's great. And so you kind of left the story off where you started speaking out about this stuff. So tell us a little bit more. So you started speaking out and you started getting targeted by them. What happened then?
Okay. So I started speaking in 2000. In 2004, very early in the morning, there was a knock at my door. I was in my office writing a letter for Lockin Rules. I don't get up early in the morning, but I did that for Larkin. And somebody's banging on the door wildly. And I'm thinking, what is my mother doing here this early? Because she's the only one that wildly bangs on the door. I got to the top of the stairs from my basement, and I had those little red lasers peering through my little window. And they said, federal agents, open up.
They had the laser.
So they had they had the red lasers on my head. Okay, my family's upstairs sleeping. I was married at the time. My husband came down the stairs. So while he was coming down the stairs and I was up in the foyer, I'm looking like, okay, if I don't let these folks in, then they have these itchy trigger fingers, and I don't want my children to wake up seeing their mom in a puddle of blood. So let me open the door. This was July. It was hot. They rushed in, but before they rushed in, the first 2 people in the door, Jeff, were county police officers. My county's police officers let those IRS people in the door. So they came in, about 15 or 20 of them. They rushed all over the house. They had one in the backyard with a metal detector, I guess to see if I had anything buried in the backyard. I don't know what these people were told about me, but it was obvious to me when they got there that what they were told was totally different from what they saw. They saw a homeschooling family just trying to live, trying to have a decent life. So a lot of them looked perplexed, but they were rambling through my drawers and all. And I had on a gown, by the way. So one of the ladies asked me, did I want to put on some clothes? And I said yes. And in my mind, as I was going upstairs into my bedroom, I selected one of the T-shirts that Lockin Rules had made and some jeans. And I went downstairs, and they had us corralled at gunpoint originally. into my family room, and I didn't sit down because I was so angry. I'm originally from Detroit, and it's like I got that in me. So I stood in front of one of them, and I was just under my breath saying, "You know you're wrong. You know you're wrong. You know you're wrong." And he just got nervous, and he left and got an older gentleman to stand there, and I stood there. And they didn't want us to go to the restroom or anywhere without their permission. I just went. I didn't. You can't tell me I can't go to my bathroom. So this went on for a while, and then eventually one of my children, which are teenagers at the time, says, "Well, can Auntie Sharon come and get us?" Their godmother. And I said, "Oh, I'll feel much more comfortable if they're not here." Now, I had gotten a chance. I have long hair. This is my hair, and it was long at that time, and they wouldn't let me make any calls. But you remember when cell phones were really, really little? It just so happened that night before, I left my little bitty flip phone in one of the chairs in the family room. So I sat in that chair, and I flipped it up, and I called Lockin Rules. And I said, "Larkin, they're raiding me." He said, "First of all, don't leave your house, because if you leave, they won't let you back in there, and they could plant anything in your house." So I didn't leave, but my children left. These people stayed from 7:45 to 5 o'clock. They left at quitting time with about 32 boxes. And this was in '04 they left. Several people, including attorneys, told me, "Well, if you shut up now, they won't bother you." But I just couldn't do that. I just continued to speak because truth is truth for everybody, or it's not truth at all. So along 2007, I get this notice that, and it's not an indictment, because an indictment is for a felony. It was called an information. An information is what they file against you when they want to file a misdemeanor. So all those years and all that investigation and going to my children's homeschool network and scaring the school and all this other stuff, then they came up with a misdemeanor, willful failure to file, which they knew in the first place because I hadn't filed a tax return since 1999. So they charged me with willful failure to file for 4 years. They have a trial, and everybody, of course, knows that there's nothing sure in life but death and taxes, which is a whole other story because that was something made up by the Federal Reserve owners. The jury was scared to death to acquit me for fear that the IRS was going to come after them. So I was convicted of willful failure to file. And as opposed to it being one charge of willful failure to file for 1 year, they did it consecutively. And they gave me a 4-year sentence on a misdemeanor. Now, if you research, that's unprecedented. People that have stabbed people that have raped people don't get a 4-year sentence. So at the sentencing, which was a few months later, this is what the judge said. "I know you homeschool your children, Miss Jackson, and I know you have a lot of family support, but you can't run around telling people not to file income tax returns." And I looked at her in the face and I said, "I never did that," because I never did. Me and Joe, and I don't know if you know the guy named John Turner, we made a pact that we weren't going to tell people what to do, because telling people what to do would get you in trouble. All we were doing was giving out information. And as we gave out that information, people were believing it, and people were doing their own research. And that was a scary part to the government.
Wow, that is a crazy story. Even by my standards of interviewed hundreds of people, that's one of the crazier stories because like you were just talking about facts about how the system works, and you were basically treated like a extreme terrorist and tracked down, and they're like spying on you, and then on top of it to just give you, they couldn't find anything to get you on, so they gave you a misdemeanor, and then gave you like 4 years for a misdemeanor, which isn't even, they're not supposed to be able to do that. Unbelievable. So did you end up spending actually 4 years in jail?
No, actually, they had to give me 6 months good time, and they had to give me 6 months halfway house. So I spent 3 years to the day in federal prison. I was in a federal prison camp in Florida for most of the time, and then when I got sick, I contacted my friends, some of you guys out there, and they contacted Ron Paul. He started an investigation, and they shipped me off to a maximum security prison 4 hours north in Tallahassee, and I was in solitary confinement for 5 months.
What?
Yes, 5 months.
Oh, my God.
And a little cell. Mm-hmm. That was my punishment.
Wow.
Yeah. Because there was a newspaper called the American Free Press. I think it was in the D.C. area. And they wrote an article saying, "Will the feds kill Sherry Jackson?" Because I was really, really sick. And that newspaper came to me every month. And when it came, it went through mail, and the people that are in charge saw it, and they got angry. So I got shipped off.
Wow. I've known some people have been in solitary for a couple days. And of course, people like Julian Assange, apparently he's not only in solitary, but being drugged and all kinds of, who knows what they're even doing to him. This is what they do to anyone who speaks out about the state, right? But I've 5 months of solitary confinement. Just out of curiosity, what was that like?
It was fine. I'm a
fine. Wow, you're strong.
I'm very introverted, and I had a Bible and I had a radio, and I was good. At
least you had I was under the understanding in solitary you couldn't even have books or anything. So at least you had something, a little bit of something.
Right, I did, and that was fine. I just kept to myself.
But still. you must be quite a loner. It was fine. 5 months in a cage by myself.
Yeah, it was actually better than being with all those women. It was like rumble hell in prison. You can't be her friend because you're my friend. And you know, I play Scrabble with somebody. I'm pretty good at Scrabble, and I guess I beat the best person that was on the prison camp, and she acted like she wanted to kill me. It was just really like romper room hell, and I was kind of probably ready to get out of romper room hell for a while. That was a break for me.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're a little bit like me. Like if I was in like one of those major prisons and dealing with all these losers and idiots and crazy people, I'd be like, yeah, just put me in a cage by myself. I'd rather just be by myself.
Yeah.
Still, though, that is absolutely insane. I didn't fully realize what you'd gone through just for speaking on this topic. So, again, like I told you, I don't know a ton about your story. So then you got out of jail, and then what have you been doing since then? Like, are you continuing to speak about this stuff, or?
Yeah, well, when I got out, well, first of all, the FBI came to see me while I was in there because evidently some of the people that have organizations like militias wrote letters and basically said, we see what you're doing to her in there, and if she dies in prison, we're going to consider it an intentional act of murder. And so the FBI thought that was a threat, and I said, that's not a threat. It'll be murder if I get killed in here by you guys. And then they came to see me after I got out, wanting me to actually spy on the very people that helped me, the very people that put money in my commissary so I wouldn't starve to death or have to eat that crazy food that made me sick. So, yeah, when I got out, I was like, okay, I don't have any restrictions. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. Now, I did realize that 95% of the people, 99% of the people in this country are not going to do what I did. They're not going to stand up and say, enough is enough. I'm not going to file anymore. So they're not going to take a sword and try to cut the head off the beast. But I felt, hey, you know what? I can help them starve the beast. I can help the people keep more of their tax money than what they're doing right now. And with the skills that I had from the IRS, being a CPA, then I started helping people that had audits, helping people that have IRS problems, and helping people start businesses so they can write off everything for the kitchen sink. You know, we have Hillary Clinton during the last election says, Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes. And everybody says, oh! And then everybody ran to me, he didn't pay his taxes. I said, listen, that woman knows what she's doing. She's telling you a bold-faced lie. There are tax laws, specifically one called the net operating loss that he took advantage of. You can take advantage of those too. If you're scared, we call it skirt here in the South. If you're scared to be bold and not file a tax return, but you still want to keep more of your money, then there are strategies that you can put in place. There are strategies that will help you protect your assets from them and other people. And that's what I teach people now. So yes, it's still going on in a different sort of way. I don't want people to go through it. I don't want people to lose their marriages. I don't want people to, have the situations where I have to rebuild relationships with my family members. You can do better by just going ahead and starting a business and keeping your money so that you can have a nice life, so that you can go on vacations and pay off your debts.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. Man, this crazy story. I knew you had a story, but I didn't know it was this crazy. So that's great. Really amazing of you to not only go through all this, but then to keep on going afterwards. That is really amazing. Really happy to have met you here, and I'm glad that you're coming to Anarchapulco. And you mentioned a few people. You mentioned Ron Paul and Lockin Rules. They'll both be speaking in Anarchapulco, so you'll be amongst like-minded people that you already know, so that's great. And I wonder if, what are you doing exactly? Like, do you have a website, or do you have a book, or do you teach courses? Like, how do you help people with trying to evade extortion?
Yeah, so I've written 8 books.
Sorry. I should do my research more.
No. My flagship book is How to Stick It to the IRS, Confessions from a Former Insider. They stuck it to me, so I'm sticking it back to them by telling people how to keep their money. My other book is How to Escape the Rat Race, which basically tells people how to get out of their debt and just how to live a life where you're not stressed and strained and all in the system in the rat race. And I deal with churches a lot, and I wrote a book called Church Wealth Ministry Health so that churches won't have to gravel. They can say what they want to say because, the government also muzzles churches. And so with them being able to have their own banks, then they can do what they want to do. In other words, get out of the control of everybody that's put you in that situation. My website is SherryPeelJackson.com. I do have a website, SherryPeelJackson.com. People contact me because I have a lot of Facebook interaction. I have a lot of YouTube interaction, and people contact me. There's so many people out there, Jeff, hurting. So many people have had their lives destroyed by, owing hundreds of thousands of dollars to the IRS. And, those are the type of people that they need help. Somebody needs to help them. A lot of the CPAs don't really deal with taxes. And when they do, they're afraid and they coddle to the IRS. So a lot of people like to talk to somebody that's been there, that has fought them, and they know they can trust me to do the best I can to help them.
Wow, that's great. And again, I apologize. I didn't fully look you up. I didn't realize you wrote 8 books. That's amazing. We'll have a bunch of them listed down below so people can get them. We'll have a link to your website and all of that. And yeah, I totally agree. Well, first of all, government is just illegitimate criminal organization to begin with. But this whole taxation thing, or extortion, is really all it is. Taxation is theft. Is unbelievable how it's... Well, actually, it is believable how many people it just absolutely destroys. If you look at most people, they're just scraping by. And they keep they bring it up in Congress every now and then. The con people in Congress bring it up. Right. They're like, "Oh, we should raise the minimum wage. Look, this person makes $40,000 a year, and she can barely afford to pay her rent." It's like, well, you notice you took $10,000, you just stole it. Right. Why don't you give it back to her? They never bring that up.
Right.
They never do. It's like this hidden sort of like extortion that no one even seems to think about because they've been brainwashed into, well, that's what we have to do is we have to pay the government or we wouldn't have roads or something like that, right?
Right.
I was even looking at a thing online just recently, and it said like 20 celebrities who were super rich and now they're basically poor and bankrupt, and like it was about 18 of them. It was because of the IRS. It was the IRS just came in and just took all their money, and they're broke. And at the end, like no one mentioned this is like a extortion racket. Like this is like the mafia, like just ruining people's lives. But a lot of people, all jealousy and all sort of stuff. It's like, well, good, he deserves it because he's too good looking or something like that. And it's like, oh God, people are so screwed up when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, brainwashed. Yeah,
by design.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so hopefully people like yourself and Lockin Rules and Ron Paul and everyone at Anarchapulco, hopefully we can wake up more and more people from their brainwashing. And I think if we can help to really change this world dramatically, but we need to just keep waking people up. So I really thank you for your service, what they say to the troops, but that's BS. But I thank you for your service for not only going through all that, but keeping it up. And so super excited to have you at Anarchapulco. So is there anything else you wanted to mention, anything we didn't talk about? If not, we'll just leave it at that, and we'll see you in Acapulco.
No, we're good. I'm so much looking forward to seeing my friends again, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. I know the health and the wealth go right together, and I'm really into the health, so this is going to be great. I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you don't know out there, it's February 13th to 16th. You go to anarchapulco.com, check out all the speakers. There's so many amazing speakers, including people like Sherry and Ron Paul, Lockin Rules, and could go on and on about amazing people. Most of them have been in jail at some point. That actually is our biggest problem with Anarchapulco is a lot of the people we want to speak are either in jail or they're on probation. They're not allowed to travel, all that kind of stuff. But we'll just keep it up because I'm like you. the government is the injustice, and I will never stop talking about it like you, and never stop fighting it in one way or another, and not necessarily violently, but at least trying to wake people up to what's going on, and trying to make it so that we can get, at least to some extent, rid of a lot of these problems. So once again, true pleasure, Sherry. I really didn't know what I was getting into with this interview. So that was, for all the people out there watching, I was just like you. I was like, what? Holy cow, this is a crazy story. I hadn't heard it before. So we'll leave it there. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love,
and
anarchy.
Anarchapulco, it's so hype, I'm trying to tell ya. This the event of the year and best vacation ever. Ron Potter, Jeffrey Tucker, just to name a few. Get your tickets, you don't want to miss it. You should roll through. Talking politics to health and self-improvement to investing. So many things, not one thing. Learn how to live life unchained, yeah. 4 days vibing on the beach, time to connect. All about growth, way more than a conference. This is Anarchapulco, yeah. Let's go.
You ain't seen nothing yet.